Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're building on some ideas we've touched on before, focusing on a piece that really, well, it challenges us to stay very present, very connected in our clinical work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's maybe just quickly unpack this a bit. Last time we dug into James Strachey's work, right?
Yes, the nature of the therapeutic action of psychoanalysis. Really seminal stuff.
It was. And Strachey was grappling with this core question. How do we move beyond just understanding the past?
Right. Into actually changing current patterns.
Exactly. And his concept, the mutative interpretation, was his answer, specifically tackling transference distortion.
And what's really fascinating there, I think, is how Strachey pictured the analyst taking on this role of an auxiliary superego.
Right. Can you say a bit more about that?
Well, it's like the analyst temporarily kind of steps into the patient's inner world, helps them manage that, harsh internal critic. And in that position, the analyst very gently allows a small bit of the patient's id energy, maybe an aggressive feeling, something intense, to come to the surface. And the real change, the therapeutic action, happens when the patient feels these impulses towards the analyst, but, and this is crucial, realizes the real analyst doesn't act like those old, harsh, archaic fantasy objects from their past.
So it's the gap.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That awareness of the difference between the projection, the internal object, and the real external person in the room. That's the key.
And that distinction is just so powerful because that new experience of the analyst gets internalized, right?
Exactly, as a less aggressive interject.
It's like taking in a healthier internal relationship model, one that's not so critical.
And that process literally helps modify the harshness of the patient's superego. It disrupts that neurotic, vicious circle, where the same old patterns just keep playing out.
Yeah, breaking the cycle. And we talked about those two phases too. First, awareness of that internal tension, the superego threat. And second, realizing the impulse is aimed at a fantasy, not the real you, the analyst. And that all hinges on their sense of reality.
Absolutely. And Strachey really stressed that for an interpretation to be truly mutative, it needed two things. To be immediate.
Right now.
Yes, addressing something active, urgent in the session, and specific, detailed, concrete, tied to that moment.
Okay.
Which, of course, raises a big question for any of us doing this work. How do we stay tuned into what's immediate and specific, especially with all the history echoing in the room?
That's the perfect bridge, actually, to today's deep dive.
Okay.
We're turning now to Betty Joseph's really powerful paper, Here and Now, My Perspective.
Yes, so.
And while it's definitely rooted in that same psychoanalytic soil, her work pushes us to see how all those complex histories, those internal objects, how they actually show up.
Manifest.
Yes, manifest and play out in the room, in the moment, right here, right now. And for you as early career psychologists really forging your clinical identity, this focus is so vital for translating theory into real-time sensitivity, real-time action.
It really is.
So let's explore how Joseph helps us navigate this, the incredible complexity of the therapeutic here and now.
Sounds good.
So Joseph's core idea, this here and now, it's more than just listening to the patient's words, isn't it?
Oh, much more. It's about how it's said, the feeling behind it, the impact it has in the immediate back and forth between patient and analyst.
Okay.
It implies this really acute awareness, almost moment by moment, of the present moment, not just thinking about the past or guessing about the future.
So a real immersion.
Joseph actually said her own work increasingly zeroed in on what is going on in the room between patient and analyst. She found real clarity there.
Interesting.
And she suggests that by working mainly in the present, grounding it there, both patient and analyst feel more anchored. It makes the whole thing less abstract, more observable for the patient too.
And that can have real effects.
Yeah, she talks about how this present focus can lead to decreased anxiety, or it might mobilize defenses or sometimes lessen them. It connects the immediate experience to the bigger theoretical picture.
So what does this mean for us? Sitting in the room with someone, what's Joseph really getting at?
She means grasping the psychic reality, what's psychologically true for both the patient and for you, the analyst, in the session as it's happening.
Okay.
It's about being really tuned in to what the patient is saying or doing, but also, and this is key, what you are saying or doing.
Our contribution.
Is always holding the patient's history, their background, and sure. But her big emphasis is moving away from, like, general explanation.
Towards the immediate experience.
Right. What's happening right now. She gives this really potent example of a patient who was very fragile because of her mother.
Okay.
And this patient might hear an interpretation about her past, even if it's playing out right there in the room, and just dismiss it. Feel it's not real.
Yeah. That rings a bell.
And that's the tension for the clinician, isn't it? How do you make that link between past and present feel relevant, feel real, not just abstract?
So what did Joseph suggest?
She learned, she said, to talk a bit carefully, to use interpretations that were maybe less concrete, more rounded, giving a more global viewpoint, as she put it.
Interesting. Softer, perhaps.
Maybe. It's about finding that balance, that sweet spot between the specific detail of the moment and the wider context, but always staying anchored in what's actually happening now.
And here's where it gets really specific. Joseph emphasizes that here and now refer directly to what's going on between the two people in the room.
Yes, the intersubjective space.
It's the immediate reality, often very concrete. It might involve the patient's body, your office, things in the room.
Totally. She has that vivid example of the child patient, remember, who crayoned on the wall.
Oh, yes, the crayon mark.
And that scribble, that physical mark here on the wall, it became volcanoes for the child, an object of terror right there and then. And seeing that immediate, tangible thing in the room helped the analyst grasp and manage the child's intense anxiety. It shows how the physical here can embody these deep internal states.
And the here, it also sort of implies a link to the world outside, right? A feeling connecting the room to their daily life.
It can, yes. But Joseph also points out, importantly, that some patients will really resist making that link.
And that resistance itself is part of the here and now.
Exactly. That needs understanding, too.
Okay, so that's the here. What about the now?
Well, the now isn't just a fixed point in time for Joseph. It carries the sense of time as dynamic, always moving, never static. It changes from moment to moment.
Fluid.
Very. And the analyst is in this unique position to witness that subtle movement, to feel the shifting forces operating in the present. And that helps enormously in understanding what's really unfolding underneath.
So practically speaking, what's the implication?
Joseph argues that our interest as analysts in understanding these dynamics of change shouldn't involve rigid ideas about progress or regression.
Like checking boxes.
Right. It's more about observing how this patient operates at this time, respecting their defenses, their needs, not imposing our idea of where they ought to be.
That feels really important, especially for early career therapists finding their feet.
It's hugely relevant because Joseph explains that observing the now in this way helps the patient become aware of those internal tensions that superego threat Strachey talked about.
Okay.
It helps them see, maybe for the first time, that their intense feelings, maybe aggression, are aimed at a fantasy object inside, not at you, the real analyst sitting there.
Connecting back to Strachey.
Directly. And this present-focused awareness allows them to actually receive interpretations differently, to respond immediately. And that opens the doors to potentially profound psychic change.
So it's this dynamic interplay, a living laboratory in the session.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, but this brings up something else crucial, the analyst's own experience, right? The potential pitfalls.
Absolutely. Joseph is very clear on this. She stresses that we need to be aware not just of the patient's unconscious reality, but also of our own unconscious reality in the moment.
Our own stuff.
Our own stuff, yes. If we lack that self-awareness, she suggests, we can't really fully believe in our relationships with patients. We can't truly understand them.
Which raises a huge question for you, a clinician listening. How do you monitor your own internal world while staying so intensely tuned in to the patient?
It's a challenge. And Joseph wisely warns against trying to track every single flicker, every moment-to-moment shift.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
And maybe intrusive.
It could feel that way to the patient, definitely. Overwhelming, perhaps. We need to be mindful of how our intense focus might affect their state of mind. It's about finding a balance. Presence, but also allowing space.
It's such a delicate balance, isn't it?
It really is.
Joseph also talks about the historical context, how Freud saw transference as history repeating in the relationship.
Right. Aspects of the past transferred onto the analyst.
And then Melanie Klein built on that with the idea of inner objects being projected into the relationship. Joseph's contribution here, she suggests, is that by carefully following these moment-to-moment shifts in the session, we can actually witness elements of history being reconstructed in the present.
Like seeing the past come alive.
Right before our eyes, yeah.
Yep.
But she also warns about interpretations that miss the mark,
Yeah.
right? The oversimplified ones.
Yes, that's a really important clinical point. She gives the example. The analyst offers a kind of straightforward, maybe a bit intellectualized interpretation.
Yeah.
And the patient reacts badly, anxiety, anger. Instead of deepening understanding, they might just intellectualize more or maybe blame someone else. Externalize.
I can picture that.
And that kind of interaction, Joseph says, often pulls the patient towards an enactment.
Acting it out.
Exactly. They start living out the conflict with you in the room rather than understanding it, which is a really key insight for those of you developing your interpretive skills. It's a strong caution to stay anchored in the immediate felt experience.
So she really connects the patient's history directly to these here and now interpretations.
Absolutely. She emphasizes that real psychic change hinges on the patient being able to feel and work through what's caught up in their present anxieties and defenses.
Not just talking about the past.
No, feeling it now.
Yeah.
And this process, this reconstruction, it impacts the analyst too. It demands that we are aware of and sometimes need to verbalize what's going on inside us as well.
Right. That self-awareness piece again.
It's central. She goes back to that example of the bullying child patient.
Okay.
When that patient experienced the analyst as someone who didn't get drawn into the bullying dynamic, who didn't become the feared object,
They change.
they became less angry, more trusting. It shows how change can literally happen minute by minute when the analyst doesn't confirm that old archaic fantasy.
It links straight back to Strachey's point about the real analyst versus the fantasy object.
Exactly. It's about providing a new, lived experience in the here and now.
Okay, let's try and make this really concrete. Imagine Mayan. She's an early career psychologist figuring things out.
Okay.
She's working with a patient who often talks about feeling dismissed, ignored by people in their life. It's a core theme.
Right. A common struggle.
So in one session, the patient starts telling a dream. But as they talk, their voice gets quieter. They start looking down, fiddling with their hands nervously.
Okay, so Mayan notices this shift in the room.
Yes. Now, if Mayan is applying Joseph's here and now lens, what does she do?
Well, what's fascinating is she'd shift her focus a bit. It wouldn't just be about the dream's content, the symbols.
But how they're telling it.
Exactly, how the patient is telling it in that moment. Mayan sees the withdrawal, the trouble with eye contact, the fidgeting, the posture shifts.
Okay.
And this raises a crucial question in Mayan's mind. Could the patient be experiencing me, Mayan, right now as someone who might dismiss them, even though I'm trying my best to listen?
The transference in the immediate moment.
Precisely. Is the fear of dismissal happening right here?
So, Mayan, thinking of Joseph, she resists jumping in to interpret the dream symbols, maybe. Or even just reassuring them quickly.
Right. She holds back on that impulse. Instead, she might gently comment on what she's observing in the room, something like,
Like what?
maybe, I notice as you're sharing this dream, your voice has gotten quieter and you seem to be looking away just now. What's happening for you right now as you're telling me this?
Bringing it right into the present interaction.
Exactly. By focusing on the here and now, Mayan opens a space for the patient to become aware of that immediate interaction, their internal experience within it.
Okay.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the goal is to help the patient realize that their internal pattern, the fear of dismissal, is actively playing out with Mayan.
Right here, right now.
Yes. Which then allows the patient to experience that Mayan doesn't actually behave like that dismissing archaic object from their past.
Creating the space for that mutative interpretation strategy you talked about.
Exactly. It's the mutative interpretation in action. The patient gets to internalize a different experience, a less harsh introject. But it is challenging for Mayan.
How so?
Because it means Mayan also has to be aware of her own feelings. Her response to the patient's withdrawal. Is she feeling impatient? Does she want to rescue them? She needs to make sure she isn't unconsciously confirming the patient's fear.
Wow, that really brings it together. What an illuminating deep dive into Joseph's here and now.
It's powerful stuff, isn't it?
It really is. We've seen just how crucial it is to anchor our attention right there in the dynamic, living interaction of the session.
Yeah.
Building on Strachey, but making it so immediate.
No, it's not about forgetting history at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But seeing how that history is alive, how it breathes in the immediate moment between you and your patient.
And really understanding that, it genuinely deepens our clinical sensitivity, I think. It allows for real psychic change to happen.
But it demands a lot from us.
It does. Continuous self-awareness, a real willingness to explore what's unfolding right now, even when it feels subtle or confusing or maybe uncomfortable.
Just being deeply present.
Yes.
So thinking about the practical takeaway here, for you listening, as an early career psychologist shaping your practice, this dive into Betty Joseph's Here and Now really offers a profound invitation, doesn't it?
It really does.
What might it mean for your clinical work to truly anchor your attention in the here and now of each session, even when, maybe especially when, it feels difficult or unclear?
And how does paying that kind of active attention to the living interaction actually change your internal landscape as a clinician?
Yeah. How does it shift things inside you, allowing for those subtle, maybe but powerful moments of change for your patients?
Something to really mull over.
Definitely. Something to think about until our next deep dive.